What's going on, folks? Ted from Immersion here, and our friends over at Creality sent me a giant box, which is apparently they're breaking into. Not only have they obviously done a ton of FDM printers and they've broken into the resin printing market, they've also now kind of spun off another aspect to do laser engraving. And I guess that might have been around for a little bit. It was my first time hearing about it. I've never done laser engraving before. Like, I understand the general concept of it. But yeah, we're going to go ahead and open this up. Okay, so we've got the hood on. It just kind of sits. And now we're attaching this side piece. This one has one little wire we had to connect that has the extraction fan and an exhaust port in the back here. So now we just have a bunch of round head screws, and we're just going to go ahead and attach all of those screws to this side. And then we have a piece that doesn't have, this piece here, that doesn't have any exhaust port, just needs to go on the other side. Okay, so a couple things. We did need to run the fan cable into there's like a track gap here, and there's a small connection for that. One thing that was a little tricky was there is the light bar, which is right here, has a little cable. There's up underneath is the spot where you connect it. Now here we have an exhaust cable, corrugated exhaust cable, and we have a hose clamp. This we need to attach on to the out exhaust over here. Now we have an exhaust port. Now we're into actual procedure, how to go about adding in pieces, the laser modes, operation. Okay, so we're ready to rock and roll, it seems like. For the hell of it, let's at least turn it on, right? See what it looks like. Get the power going. I mean, we've come this far. We'll do that before we actually dive into setting things up and actually printing. Alright. Power. Green light on the power. Here we go. Switch. Maybe the emergency stop button was on. Oh, this was pressed. So, if you look, this was down. I assume this is supposed to be up, and then you press it to stop. Let's see. A thought just occurred to me. Perhaps the safety switch was off, and we need to turn it on. So, let's see. Alright. Lock it in. Okay, yeah. So the keys are stay locked. I bet you that's what it was. I bet you we needed to activate the safety switch. Let's turn off all these switches. On. Oh, I see lights. There, we got noise. Okay. Safety switch, the air assist is on. This is actually, I think you can see that, it's actually got a decent amount of extraction. We're going to try to figure something out to print. Alright, so first thing I learned, I went and used the USB stick to try to play around. So, first thing, you cannot activate this without hooking it up to a computer, which is honestly kind of a bummer. We've come so far in the world of 3D printing with having screens and things on there where you can access and control everything you need to all right from the machine. You can plug in a USB stick or a micro SD card. So unfortunately what you'll have to do to calibrate this, also I have to check, but the software that they use is called Lightburn. It doesn't seem like it comes with a proprietary version, so like it told me to download Lightburn and use the 1 month free trial to use the burner. I'm hoping that there's maybe a code that I missed somewhere that it comes with, so you can have full access to the Engraver tool. Otherwise, you're not going to have access to your software. So I'm going to go get a laptop, I guess, and then those two cables, turns out that's what these were for. There is a port here and a port up here. So you're going to plug in both USB-C to A ports and then run them into your computer, activate the Lightburn software, and then while in Lightburn, it should be able to detect what machine you have. I don't even know if I ever mentioned, this is a Creality Falcon 2 Pro, as the machine goes. I don't know if I actually said that from the start. Alright, it's probably a little loud. That's the fan, although we can turn that off. Also, I think we might try just running the exhaust directly into the activated carbon. Give that a shot. We're currently calibrating the camera. So we've got it all set up on my laptop over here to the side. And then basically I am moving, there are instructions, you can see on my laptop here, where you're basically moving the camera, or that like card with the dots on it, to try to mimic what it shows you on the actual software. And then you hit capture, and that helps calibrate where the camera is at. So we're going to do that. Then we should actually get to start burning a piece of wood. So we'll try that out in just a sec. Okay, we calibrated the camera. So now we're going to put in this piece of basswood in here. And see if we can get you up a little bit higher so you guys can actually see what we're dealing with. And now we have our sort of spacing block. We're going to go ahead and slide our laser over. Go ahead and loosen our thumb screws. And then lift up the laser to rest it on that spacing block. And then tighten down our thumb screws again. So now, I think, actually, let's see, I don't know. Let's go ahead and let's get that a little bit better spacing on there. We want to make sure should be able to just kind of pull this out. Alright, hopefully that was enough. And we'll see, get the program set. And we'll go ahead and hit start. There you go, there's number 4. I'm just going to go over here and then do 3 and 2 and 1. Alright, well, burnt the calibration plate. Threw a little T in there for Ted as a test. So we are now officially set up and ready to actually try to engrave something. Alright, it does, I think you guys can see it, it does seem to be cutting out that eagle shape. It is a little bit off-center from the piece that I put in, but again, I just, like where I had placed it on the piece, but I don't know enough that if I need to calibrate each corner each time, or how this works. It's just a learning, we're trying to figure it out. Like, it looks like it is cutting out all of those individual feathers. So, once this comes out, we can get a look to see if this whole thing is completely cut-free. Alright, it just finished. Go ahead and take a look. Well, completely cut. Again, I had it off to the side a little bit more, but alright. And, I mean, turn off the, there we go. That, let me take off I don't need the laser glasses on anymore. That's, like, clean. Look at that. I mean, there's a little bit on the other side. There's like, it looks like almost like sap or something on the slats. But, I mean, that is really, really nice. So, alright, now we gotta do something fun. Alright, so I took some time and played around with some of the settings. And there's actually a really helpful file that came on the USB stick that kind of gives you parameters for engraving or cutting different materials. So I tried to play around with a couple of things, and it's obviously going to take a little bit of dialing in, but I did a couple of things. So I took my artwork of Theodore the Orange, and I tried to engrave it on this piece of wood. And you can pretty much make it all out, although it is a little faint. Now this was at 20% power. You could see most of it, but I think if I'd gone a little bit heavier, I might have been able to do something better. So I did this one at 30% power, and it's significantly darker. Now, granted, it doesn't have as much nuance as that piece of art, But I do really like this. I think this came out pretty well. Now, what am I going to do with this? Probably not much, but you could use this in theory to make cool signs. And then I said, well, what am I going to do? I could engrave more acrylic. I could cut more stuff out. By the way, a couple of things that I have learned is the kind of burning into here. It is kind of in the FAQs that like this can happen, so you may want to put something down to kind of prevent this. Maybe like a piece of sheet metal or something to prevent it from engraving or cutting into this. I also could potentially, I think that was at 100% intensity for that cut. And I mean, well, it did come out, you know, perfect. I think I probably could have maybe turned it down to 90% intensity, and maybe that would have prevented it from cutting through. It's going to take a little bit of dialing in. But then I said, you know, well, what else could I do? So I was like, well, I can pretty much engrave just about anything. So I took this notebook I got for the 50th anniversary of Dungeons and Dragons, and it's all, you know, mirrored because it's the front-facing part of my camera. But I engraved Nerd Immersion on the outside of it. So essentially, all I had to do with this is use our sort of leveling block and put it down, and then put the laser on top of it so that it would be at the proper height, and then cut it. Now, I did this only at like 18%, and I also did line, so it's just the outline, which I actually meant to do fill, so it would have actually filled in all of this as opposed to just making a line. I also made sure I turned on framing laser so that like it'll make like a little kind of let you see what the area you're engraving. So then I said, all right, well, let's try leather. So I have this pouch here that I wear on my Theodore the Orange costume, and I found an image of a unicorn, and I engraved that unicorn on there. Now, this is something you also need to consider, is that like this is brown leather. We're engraving it, so it's going to kind of burn it to be black. There is actually a surprising amount of detail, and I think you can kind of see it if I tilt it. You don't see a ton of it like straight on, and I probably could have made the artwork bigger and it would be more noticeable, but like this one was actually a little wonky. You can see there's a little bit of a misstep right there because it's not flat, so I kind of had to like lay this out and play around with it. So it might be better to not do to turn the slats sideways for engraving purposes, and maybe even like clamp this down so that it doesn't have so much, you know, rigidity to it. I took my son's monster manual. I engraved his name on the front cover of his monster manual, so that way people know whose it is. And then I said, well, let's try, so I have this just black kind of notebook, and I said, well, why don't I try to engrave some stuff on the front? So I tried to do two things. Now, the trick is going to be with a lot of this, figuring out what you want to, what the intensity is. Because part of me is worried that, like, this is, you know, it's not maybe a millimeter thick, maybe 2. So I didn't want to go too intense and then burn it, because obviously I don't want to set everything on fire. But this is what I got. So I did a beholder and then, like, the Dungeons and Dragons logo. And it's kind of got a little bit of, like, this white sort of artifacting around the outside, and that's probably the material. But I think it came out really well. Now, I think I did this at 18% intensity. I probably could have gone up to 20, maybe 25. Or it might be the speed is why you kind of see this. Maybe I should have slowed it down a little bit, and then it would have handled it a little bit better. But honestly, this is really good. All you have to do, too, with a lot of this is if you wanted to do something that maybe you could maybe just take the drawer out and then maybe slide something, you know, in, or, you know, if you need, or maybe take the slats out and take the drawer out if you're trying to do something significantly larger that doesn't necessarily fit on the space. I haven't had any issues with the extraction, just kind of pulling it into an activated carbon filter. It does make significantly more smoke when you're doing the cutting, but that also might have been just because it was burning into the metal underneath. Maybe that's part of the reason why we saw so much smoke. So that might be one to run the exterior fan to just draw it to the outside of the house. But I think a lot of this is going to be trial and error and watching, you know, tutorials and things. But I really like the machine. I think it works very well. So I definitely thanks to Creality for sending this over for review purposes. There's going to be some nuance, just like there is with anything like 3D printing or any kind of crafting where you're going to figure stuff out. I saw the original Falcon 2 had like a honeycomb metal pattern instead of these slats. It might be worth investing in one of those to put inside there to maybe figure that out. I like that I have the camera, and this thing is fast. It does these very quickly. Like, I think this unicorn onto this piece of leather, I think this was like 10 minutes tops to do that. So obviously it'll depend, and obviously cutting will take longer because it's going to do multiple passes to bore through things. But it's a relatively compact machine. It has a ton of versatility. You could engrave, I think if we were to look at that list, it gives us a variety of different things. I think let's see, if I were to look at that and pull up that list, it's got basswood or basswood, walnut plywood, rosewood plywood, bamboo, craft paper, red card paper, red felt, brown leather, a variety of different color acrylic, whether glossy or transparent or frosted, anodized aluminum, brushed stainless steel, and white tile painted black. So, and then it obviously has different recommended power settings and speed settings. So, for example, for the brown leather, I actually followed I used this as kind of like the brown leather paper, and I followed those settings. I might have needed to slow this down a little bit. Or it might just be the nature of this because it's kind of glossy. But all in all, I mean, I think the amount of things I could do with this are near limitless, right? Like I was thinking about taking, do I have anything in here? I don't. Like, I mean, so like this is a poor example because this is a real rusty set of channel locks, but like I could take like any of my metal tools and like engrave my initials or my name on the tool. So that way, like if I'm at a job site or something, someone's not going to take it. Or on the handle, right, if it's like a wooden handle. And that's just like a cool everyday use for things. I saw some of the older Falcon 1, they also Creality made a like round device for like engraving like tumblers, which would be really cool if you wanted to, like you found your favorite tumbler from whatever that company might be. And, you know, maybe you either don't want to pay for, custom engraving, or you think about it after the fact, or maybe something you already have, and you maybe want to add something custom to it. They have like a rounded thing that holds them, so you could engrave, onto like a cup surface, which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I think it's an absolutely fantastic little machine. My couple of upgrades that I would love would have been a screen on here. So that, similar to, again, 3D printers where you can activate it, because, like, right now it's kind of, you have to hook it up to a computer, which means you have to be in a place when you can do that. Thankfully, a lot of us have laptops, so it's not a big deal, but, like, I'm in my shop, my computer is 2 rooms away from me. I could run giant-ass USB-C cables all the way over to my computer, but, obviously a laptop is the way to do it. So if I'd had a means where, like, again, where I could just insert a USB stick, or maybe an SD card. The other thing I need to figure out is about firmware updates, because I think I have to basically transfer firmware updates to a USB or a micro SD card and then put the micro SD card in here. And then I assume it updates the firmware automatically. I'm not sure. I have some ability to control it here, but I think the capability of having that screen, that if I plug in something, I can just choose, like, okay, go ahead to this and hit print, and then it would just go ahead and do that. The other thing I would love personally is I would have loved a 4-inch exhaust port. I know a lot of these 3D printers all seem to do 3-inch and things like that, do 3-inch exhaust ports. I feel like most of us are buying these kind of 4-inch flex hoses for running extraction, especially if you're running it with something, like these big bad boy extraction fans. You want to have a larger, so you're doing obviously adapters and converters to go from 3 to 4. But that's a pretty minor thing. Obviously, the other thing that I would love is auto-leveling, right? That's where we've gotten with 3D printing now, where pretty much any 3D printer out there has a means of doing some form of auto-leveling. But, I like the overall improvement. I like having the sort of enclosure all based on it. I had seen some of the older versions, they had to put, like, a housing over it. And then, like, you could stick stuff with it. It'd allow you to do significantly larger items because you could just slide them underneath. Whereas, obviously, you have the drawer, but this is nice for convenience for, like, when extra pieces drop out, you can just go ahead and pull and actually take the whole drawer out and dump the garbage out, or the extra cut off pieces or what have you. But yeah, I'm a big fan of the Falcon 2 Pro. And really, your imagination is the limitation on what you could do with this kind of thing. So I think for purposes of cool crafts, presents, or even things like, costuming, right? I could put in craft foam in here and have it cut the foam so that I don't have to worry about doing this by hand. I could have it laser cut to exactly the dimensions that I need. So anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions. I'll have links in the description for the Creality Falcon 2 Pro. Again, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below, and I'll see you all next time.